Hi guys, welcome to URG Radio. My name's Kirby Viper 93, but you can call me KV if you like, and I'm joined today by
6, and I'm terrible at platformers. Just FYI.
And
and the OldWorldGamer, and I like platformers.
well, it's a good thing. That's a good thing we're mentioning platformers all this time, you assholes, because that is what we're talking about this week. But first of all, you guys all do remember 6 from the last episode of the podcast. Ghosty is not with us this week. She had other things planned, but we do have the OldWorldGamer. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself for those of us who maybe don't watch your shows for whatever reason.
I'm a Newfoundland Canadian, I guess, gamer or whatever. I've been on the go, doing the whole commentary, Let's Play thing or whatever for about 2 years now. I don't know. What else am I gonna say about myself, really?
What the fuck do you want to say about yourself?
I don't know. Maybe I don't want to say anything else about myself.
Then you don't say a fucking thing.
Fine.
Okay.
Basically, what you need to know about OWG here is that he's more or less the head of URG, the unofficial head. He runs his own show, Old World Reviews, and he was interested in being on the podcast last time, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he sort of had to step back, and that was where Ghosty came in. So it's good to have you. Hopefully, we can have you on for quite a few sessions in the future.
Indeed.
Let's go ahead. We've got a couple of announcements for you guys before we really get started. In terms of within UnitedRetroGamerz, Stefan, I know you had something to mention.
Yeah, Old World Reviews are going to be put on hold until I get a new video camera. Basically, the one that I'm using right now doesn't do HD. It's all in standard definition, and it doesn't look very good, in my opinion. The lighting's bad, the audio's kind of bad. The whole look of it's kind of grainy as well, so I've wanted to get something that looks a little bit more professional, something that's at least in HD. So until then, I have something else planned. It's already in the works. It's going to be a 5-part series, so I think you guys will enjoy it, put it that way. I'm pretty sure.
All right, that's good to know.
I hope so.
Good to know that you're not going away entirely, anyway.
No, God, no.
All right, sure. And I think that's really all we had within UnitedRetroGamerz. As far as the world of gaming goes, Steam just announced their new family sharing plan. According to their press release, you can or will be able to soon authorize up to 10 other computers to play games in your library, which I think is a brilliant idea for letting people test the games that they want to play before they decide whether or not they want to buy it. And it's especially useful for keeping kids away from, say, their parents' credit card information. So, like, they have their own account, but it's not linked to any card, and parents just have to buy it and let them have access to the library.
You can also share the family.
Yes, very good. Very good. You've hit the nail right on the head with what this whole thing's about.
Exactly.
That is, like I said, that it's not quite up and running yet. I believe it's going to limited beta within the next week or so by the time this goes up. But, yeah, that should be pretty interesting. It'll be awesome to share my games with a bunch of you assholes.
Hey, you gotta say it so rude-like.
You know I love you.
Everyone likes to have their... Never mind.
Well, then. All right.
On that note, I think Stefan wanted to talk about the NVIDIA Shield.
A new, I guess, most of you have probably heard about it by now, the NVIDIA Shield, which is actually, it more or less looks like an Xbox controller with a screen on it. And I think it's a 5-inch screen, and it runs Android, and I believe that its processor is actually the fastest Android processor right now. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I read something about that. It uses the NVIDIA's Tegra 4 processor in order to I guess, run the operating system or whatever, and whatever else is going to be on there. But basically, you can play Android games on it, you can use emulators on it, and you can stream your games from your PC to the device directly, so that, if you're playing it on your PC and you have to go poop, well, you can bring the game with you and not have to miss any of that gameplay. It's right there with you all the time. I think that's a great idea in itself. I mean, there's some people out there who take long poops.
Sounds like they're taking the Wii U's idea and running with it, with the tablet controller and all that.
Kind of. Apparently, it's pretty heavy, though. from one of the reviews that I was looking at, one of them said that it weighs about 2 PlayStation Vitas.
Jesus.
Damn.
Yeah, so I mean that can probably get heavy, and I'm pretty sure that it can also it can play like movies and stuff. Like if you wanted to load up movies on the flash card or whatever. So I mean that's also a nice little function as well. So
that's interesting. It's portable, but not in like the pocket play sense, like a DS or a Vita.
Exactly, it's a little bit bigger than that, but I mean people are sporting the those tablets and stuff now. So I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Carrying a controller in your purse, or I mean, I wouldn't have.
Why is purse what you went with first? Are you
Put
trying
it
to tell
in your
us something
pocket,
here?
Maybe.
Your
well,
backpack.
I guess so. Well, maybe you have a trench coat. Those have big pockets. Maybe you're wearing cargo pants.
True.
Yeah. Okay. Except cargo pants
thing
usually
about it
just
is
have
that
more pockets.
The touchscreen or the touchscreen display itself also plays in 720p.
Oh Jesus!
Nice.
So it's very, very nice.
That's pretty cool.
I like.
It's very worth it. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention about that?
Right now, there's a bunch of games that it can stream, including like Grand Theft Auto 4, what else? Half-Life 2, Just Cause 2, Left 4 Dead 2. Some of the Android games include Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City, Shadowgun, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2. I don't know
hell
how
yes.
many of you guys play that stuff, so.
That sounds like a lot.
Sounds
of fun.
interesting. Can't wait to see how that turns out.
Indeed.
Steve, you were the one talking about the Terraria update last time. How's that coming along?
Well, it's due October 1st. You can go to their site and look that up, I believe. But the other thing I wanted to mention is Minecraft is due another update. They're talking about, it's mostly for looks is what it is, like 2 tall grass, grass, and then flowers that are 2 blocks high. But they just recently put out an update so that way you wouldn't lose your existing structures, because for some odd reason with the 1.7 update you would lose exactly where a structure was, like a village or whatever, and they just fixed it. So if you were worried about some of those things, they're working on it, and it's turning out to be a really nice update.
Cool. It's mostly an aesthetic update, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's what I've seen so far. They don't tell you everything, so I would have to go look at the snapshot to find out everything that was going on. So maybe next time before the update comes out, I will have more information for you.
Right. Sounds good. All right, last but not least in terms of announcements, we've got some new releases just coming up as well. I know Diablo 3 just came out pretty recently. I guess it's pretty damn fun, but not having played Diablo 1 or 2, I couldn't really tell ya.
That's Diablo 3 for the console.
Oh yeah, the PC version.
Very good.
The PC version's been out for a while.
PC version's PC version. Kingdom Hearts 1.5
which
remix,
is touted as the final mix for whatever reason for the United States and the rest of the world that isn't Japan.
You know what? I purposely have not kept up with the Kingdom Hearts series, so I don't pretend to know what the fuck is going on there. But Kingdom Hearts nerds rejoice, because that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Grand Theft Auto 5 is out later this week. Congratulations to you assholes who want to go rape and pillage.
That's their thing. You be nice.
Hey, more power to you. That's what you want to do. And I believe the last one due to mention is Wind Waker HD, which is on the cusp of release itself.
Which I think we're all pretty excited about that one.
I really liked Wind Waker. It wasn't my favorite of the Zelda games, but it was hella fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's all the gaming announcements we got going on. Let's go ahead and get right into the poll. Last week we were talking about the PlayStation 4 versus the Xbox One versus Oculus Rift. And we really didn't get a whole lot of response except for from Stefan, who weighed in, I believe, in favor of Oculus Rift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your decision there?
Well, basically, the word Oculus Rift is more or less virtual reality with having the screen, I guess, fixed in front of your face or whatever. With the way that the gaming's going right now, I know they have other devices that pair up with it as well, such as, there's I can't remember what it's called now. It's a running device where you more or less, you run and spot. And so, say if you were playing Skyrim, you could have the Oculus Rift on, and you could look around, and it's like you're looking around in the wilderness, and you're like, you know what? I think I want to run the Whiterun this morning, and you can actually get up in the morning and run to Whiterun.
Very
Sounds
nice.
pretty cool.
I mean, and if you're up in summer cold, like here in Canada, you could just open the window in the wintertime and let the chill come in, and it'll actually feel like you're running in Whiterun.
It's a very immersive experience.
Exactly. So
I don't blame you
that,
for going out in terms of
I mean,
Oculus Rift.
I know it's very basic right now, but I think it has a lot of potential, and I think that's the way that gaming is eventually going to go, anyways. Just because, I mean,
That's
we've
what
been doing the
that's what
whole
everyone's
TV
hoped
thing
for,
forever,
really.
So
Yeah, we don't want to be bound to a TV forever. Hopefully
maybe.
someday the image will
Maybe
just
some
be
people
placed on our eyeballs, and we just run in place, and it all works out.
yeah, well,
Oculus
hey,
Rift contacts.
I mean,
There you go.
Nintendo tried to get the Wii with the whole, getting people in action and making them move instead of just being lumps on a couch or in a computer chair. So, I mean,
Right.
I actually embrace it. I'm a big dude, and you know what? If I had an Oculus Rift and that thing for running around, and I could just do that with Skyrim every day, I don't think I'd just be running every day. I mean, you just run around and be like, yeah, I'm just going to go in this dungeon and slice off some, heads or something from some vampires or something. So,
Right.
I think that'd be very enthralling, and I mean, I think you'd look forward to the whole challenge of, being able to have the endurance yourself instead of relying on just your two thumbs and a couple of fingers.
Yeah.
Right, I'm with you. All right, so that was the results of last week's poll. This week, in keeping with our topic this week, which is a discussion of the platforming genre, our question for you, the listener, is: what is your favorite indie platformer? Doesn't have to be a straightforward platformer. For example, mine is Cave Story, which is more of a Metroidvania style kind of game. It's got a lot of shooting elements and a little bit of puzzle solving, and it's not as heavily platforming as some other games we're going to mention today, but it's one of my favorites.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't played Cave Story. I've been meaning to for a long time because I've heard that it's really good.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
most recently, I've been playing Rogue Legacy, and right now, I would have to say that that's probably my favorite indie platformer. That's not to say that there's not a dozen other ones out there that are just as good, if not better. So,
Yeah, and I haven't played Rogue Legacy yet, so
oh,
I finally got a chance to play Rogue Legacy, so I can actually say that's my favorite indie platformer at the moment.
Right.
I haven't
because you haven't really touched the indie platformer genre, you dick.
I know. I just finally broke into it, but at least I have input on it. It's so much fun. They take old style inputs, and I don't know how to put it all together, but
Feels slimy.
there's definitely old platformer stuff and then new ideas mixed into one, and it makes a great game for me anyway.
That sounds interesting. When I have money, I'll have to check it out. Once the family sharing thing. Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah,
Kick ass.
you can has it for free.
I can has. That's awesome. Thanks a lot, man.
not a problem.
All right. As mentioned just a minute ago, topic for this week is the platforming genre. Just entirely. Some notable entries. What makes it good? What makes it bad? What makes it weird? What makes a platformer, essentially.
Essentially.
Yeah, essentially. One of the first things to note is platforming is one of the first established genres. I mean, I know there were shooters, and you could say, like, the sports genre was really the first with Pong. But, Asteroids had the shooting genre, and there was Galaga and stuff. But then we had games like Frogger and Pitfall and Donkey Kong, which really made platforming what it is. And, of course, you can't mention platforming games without mentioning Mario. I mean, for God's sake, he's the patron saint of video games.
That's undeniable.
Yeah. I mean, when most people think of a platforming game, they probably, automatically go to Mario.
Of
I mean,
course.
even though there's hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of other games, I would say that most people would hit Mario immediately.
Of course. And there were so many great Mario games, too. I mean, there are very few bad ones, at least in terms of actually platforming. There were a lot of spin-offs that were whatever. But, I mean, think just like Mario 3 was like everyone's favorite for the longest time just because of everything that it introduced.
That's true.
I mean, think of like the Tanuki suit and all that, the frog suit, just giving Mario that kind of versatility and introducing the Koopa kids too, like Bowser's kids.
That was something they did really well in that game, is they extended Bowser's legacy.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like in the first game, fighting Bowser every time and having it turn out to not really be Bowser was kind of bullshit.
And annoying, to be honest.
Yeah, and annoying. And having, an actual kid to fight every time was, it was interesting.
Another thing about the Sonic is that it transcends to today. It's kind of more of a platformer in 3D, but it still
I'm sorry, did
works
you say
out.
Sonic?
I said Sonic. I meant
You said Sonic.
Mario.
Way to fucking go.
I can't be perfect all the time. What do I look
We're
like?
not even. We're not. I mean, you can't mention Mario without mentioning Sonic, but
There you
let's
go.
let him wait his turn. He's fast and impatient.
I
Whoa.
meant to talk about Sonic and the 3D and how it's kind of a cross genre now, where you don't just have the platforming, but you also have the 3D to deal with in conjunction with the platforming.
Right. And there's a little bit more exploration in terms of the 3D. Like, you got to look around and see where you're going before you can go.
Exactly.
And that was Super Mario 64 did that really well. Like, I mean, it sort of paved the way for 3D gaming in general.
That can be said, for sure. But I think we could go back to Sonic now for platformers.
You think so already? Man, you're really pushing this Sonic thing.
I don't
we
mean
talked-
to, but you can't mention Sonic without or Mario without. It's like they're eternal rivals. No matter what you do, they have to
Yeah,
be mentioned.
that's true.
In the same
And I
breath.
mean, we sort of talked about this in the last one, is, Mario and Sonic did have a kind of rivalry going, and Sonic was more about speed, whereas Mario was more about precision. I mean, Sonic tried to do a little bit of precision, but, I mean, it slowed him down, and it felt a little bit clunkier than in Mario. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. You said Mario then in Mario, but I know you meant Sonic then in Mario. It's all good.
Is that... Shit, I'm pulling at you now.
Hey, be nice. Be nice.
And while we're talking about Mario and Sonic, I know Mario kind of had... Mario's 3D transition was a lot smoother than Sonic's. I have played Sonic Heroes, I played a little bit of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and I can honestly say that Mario handled the transition to 3D a lot better. It's... I'm not really sure how to say it. Stefan, you had something you wanted to say?
No, I haven't played any of the 3D Sonic games myself, so I can't weigh in on that at all. Now, I've played the first 3 Sonic games, and, well, again, comparing Sonic and Mario together, it's just not the same anyways, because different, everything's different. I mean, for one thing, if you compare the first 3 Mario games to the first 3 Sonic games, well, the first 3 Mario games are 8-bit, the first 3 Sonic games are 16-bit. And actually,
Well, no, a couple of the Sonic games came out on the Master System.
That's what I was just about to say. And and I don't know. Like I said, it just seems like there's a lot of differences. Like you said, I mean, where Sonic just bases itself a lot on the speed, and with Mario, there's usually one way to end a level. Now I know, like if you go with the first one, there's only one way to end the level, and even in the second and third ones, there's only kind of one way to end the level, unless you find a secret mushroom house in World 3 in the first, or Stage 3 in the first world, or something like that. But,
yeah,
I mean, for the most part,
I get what you're getting at.
Yeah,
like
whereas
Sonic had a
with
little bit more of a
Sonic-
branching path thing going on.
Yes, exactly. Sonic had a lot of branching paths, so that if you could go underground, you could go above ground. Just it all depended on what you did. And I mean, another thing it used a lot of too is the springboards and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Mario did have springboards, but
they were an afterthought.
I was gonna say I'm hard pressed to think about any in Mario 3, but they did have the music blocks, which aren't exactly the same. Like, I mean, the red ones push you up into the clouds, and the white ones kind of bounce you a little bit. But I mean, it's nothing compared to a springboard in Sonic. So I mean,
Right.
I mean, they both had their audiences, and I mean that's the same thing as the whole. What do you like better, PlayStation or Xbox? It was the same thing.
Yeah, they're
back
entirely
then,
different
so.
animals. I understand the
That's
argument, and I agree with you.
So I mean, I think they both made way for a lot of different things, and I'm sure that a lot of the other new platform games were based off of both, and maybe some were based on one more than the other as well. So I just think that they both have their right in the platforming genre. Like I don't think that Sonic should be just forgotten.
No, of course not. But
No.
Sonic really has sort of fallen from grace as of late. But
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think they need to, stop screwing around with the fucking 3D bullshit. I mean, I've been saying that with Mario for a long time. And I'm not saying that I don't like Mario 64 and, Super Mario Sunshine and Galaxy and stuff. Those were all great, and I'm glad they put them out. But, I mean, honestly, I was always happy with 2D platforming Mario from the get-go. I mean, that was fine.
They
well,
didn't
and
need...
Mario definitely sort of kept it going. Sorry to cut you off, Steve, but
That's all right.
Mario had like New Super Mario Bros. And all that to sort of keep the 2D platforming going as well, because they know that there were a lot of fans of that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at how long the time between the next platforming Mario game and the one that they had for like Super Nintendo, it was so far apart. I mean, they had the Mario 64 and the Super Mario Sunshine, and then you screwed around with the 1,000-Year Door and stuff, which was more along the lines of a platforming RPG, I guess you could say.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that's a whole
a discussion
animal.
for another time.
Yeah, that's completely different anyway.
We could have an entire podcast just on Paper Mario games.
Well, I mean, you could just see how things evolved as well. I mean, they even tried to put platforming in an RPG, so
yeah,
platforming is obviously a very important role in video gaming.
Yeah,
period.
And I mean, just about every genre has elements of platforming in it, because it's really hard not to. It's really just get from here to here by whatever means possible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just there's a difference between, having platforming elements and being a straight-up platforming game.
Exactly.
Which is something we did want to kind of try and define in this episode of the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the games we're talking about are more hard platformers. Like, not difficult platformers, but more definite platformers.
Yeah.
Like in Mario and Sonic, where getting from point A to point B is the entire point, rather than just a means to an end. Like in Zelda, you got to get from here to there in order to get this item, blow up a wall, blah, 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 blah. That's different. You have to actually make your way through something. You have to navigate a dungeon, and you do so by getting from here to here, rather than, straight line, obstacles in your path, get over them, get to the flag. That's a completely different beast.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right. I think we've spoken long enough on Mario and Sonic. Again, that in itself could be its own podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's move on. Let's talk about something else for a while. Stefan, you had a couple games I haven't played that you could probably talk about.
Well, I guess the one in particular that I was going to mention was EVO, and that I don't know why that comes to mind. I mean, there's a lot of Super Nintendo games that come to mind, like we were talking about Rogue Legacy, and as soon as I seen Rogue Legacy for the first time, I was like, oh my god, this is Magic Sword. And anyone who knows Magic Sword, it was an arcade game that was also a Super Nintendo game, and basically you're just walking straight across the screen, jumping up and down on platforms, and just hack and slash the entire time. That's it. And that's basically all Rogue Legacy is, and both of them, in my opinion, are fun platforming games. So, but yeah, EVO was... that was a really different game just because of all the other elements they added into it too, but at the same time, like, they forced you to immerse yourself in different worlds of those platforming elements. Like, first you started off as a fish. So, I mean, I know it doesn't sound like, oh, well, what kind of platforming is there in that? But, I mean, just the general moving around, it's almost like they went for an evolution of how platforming can go. Like, they went from just, basic moving up and down, left and right, and, it just in several directions. And then, later when you actually get legs and you move out of onto land, you're actually, genuinely platforming by jumping on, cliffs and ledges and stuff. And then eventually you can turn yourself into a bird in which, there's clouds and stuff and you still have to maneuver around and there's still platforms that you can use. And as a bird, if you're hit, you fall to the ground. If you fall to the ground, you have to jump up, off of this platform and, propel yourself in order to start flying again. So it's just very interesting how
it was kind of an experimental platformer.
Exactly.
Definitely. That's what I could say, having played quite a bit of that myself. It's all about trying to get you to try new things in the platforming area.
Yeah.
That's good. I like to hear about innovation like that, and especially back in the Super Nintendo era when they were still really sort of defining what gaming was.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, from what you've talked about with that, it sort of sounds like that, like, elements of that have sort of seeped into other games.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I don't know that anyone would really cite EVO as a source, but it seems like that kind of train of thought really sort of made its way into other games, which is good. It's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. And I think most people who end up playing it could probably find examples of maybe what other games it could help influence. But I mean, it is a fairly unique game in itself as well. So
sounds interesting. I'll have to check it out.
You should.
Yeah. Moving on, there were definitely quite a few hard platformers, even way back in the day, with Ninja Gaiden being one really great example. Castlevania we can also sort of mention in the same breath, although it was hard for different reasons, I think.
Yeah, you could say that, but we should also mention Metroid at the same time, since...
Yeah, Metroid definitely, although that was more...
a different...
Like how I just talked about Cave Story, it was more focused on the killing. There was less platforming. Like, not... it's a little bit of a misnomer to say, because there was a lot of exploring and there was a lot of jumping around, but it was also equally focused on the shooting. So I mean, I would say it's more of a soft platformer, and I would say the same for Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania as well.
But they brought mechanics to the genre.
Exactly. And they're definitely worth mentioning, especially for showing off just how hard a platformer could be. Because, I mean, even Mario had, like the original games and lost levels. But, I think when you think hard platforming, a lot of people jump immediately to Ninja Gaiden.
Oh, God.
Ugh.
I grew up the first one. It was basically the second game I ever got, which means, first one being Mario and Duck Hunt, second game being Ninja Gaiden.
Ouch.
That was a cruel thing to do to a kid. I'm sorry, but when you're like, hey, oh, you like video games, here's Ninja Gaiden. And you're just like, oh, cool, ninjas. It's the 80s and everything is ninjas. And you go and play it, and you're like, oh, okay, Second World is really tough. And then you find out there's actually 6.
Right.
Ouch.
Yeah,
that's bullshit is what it is.
Indeed it is.
Yeah. And Castlevania kind of did that, too. I mean, like, it was all... Like, you knew it could be done, but you're going at it, and you're going at it forever and ever and ever, and you can't do it. You're just like, my God, why am I playing this game?
Exactly. Just because you want to finish it.
Yeah, and that kind of thing can be done well, and it can be done really wrong. And we'll talk about a way that it was done wrong in a second here. But I think Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden definitely did it right. I mean, they sort of made it clear that they weren't going to go down without a fight, but they definitely... like, they also made it clear that it could be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's agreeable.
And another game I think that did that is Donkey Kong Country. Like, it started off pretty easy, kind of cutesy. Also introduced a lot of interesting elements, like the barrel cannons and mine carts.
Oh, those barrels.
Oh god, those are my favorite levels. Was the ones that focus specifically on those.
I hated minecarts.
I love them. I must be like the only person in the entire world that liked the minecart sections of Donkey Kong Country. Those are my favorite bits.
I have to say they were fun, but when you failed in the middle of a level, it just destroyed your morale state, and you didn't want to play anymore. That's what happened to me anyway.
Well, you can say that for a lot of games, really.
That's
Ninja Gaiden comes to mind.
Yeah, that is the platforming genre in general.
Yeah, definitely. Donkey Kong Country definitely gave you an idea of, like, just a slow learning curve. Like, it got progressively harder, and, like, you died a lot, and then you got the hang of it, and then you died a lot again as the game went on, and it got harder and harder, but you got better and better as it happened, so it kind of maintained a base difficulty at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I can agree with that. That makes sense.
Yeah, so Donkey Kong Country is... and remains one of my favorite games for that reason. And also because minecarts.
Minecarts.
And the idea that platforming games can be really hard, but still fun and still possible, sort of carried over into the indie platforming games with Super Meat Boy especially comes to mind.
I've never played it.
And
Super Meat Boy... All right, Super Meat Boy has just some really super tight controls. And like it's pretty slippery, as you might expect from a game called Super Meat Boy, but it's really fast paced and it lets you like just die and go instantly. So like there's no number of lives like there is in, say, Mario or Sonic or Donkey Kong Country or whatever. Like, you keep going until you get it, and you respawn just about instantly. So there's no excuse not to redo the level when you die, especially considering each one takes, an average of 7 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
They're just a really, really, really hard 7 to 10 seconds.
But it's not like it was 3 minutes of hard jumps. So
exactly. So it's when you die, it's like you're in the same spot, but like, when you die, you'll die in the same spot a lot, but it's not like you have to go through so much to get to that point. And it was forgiving in that sense, but it was unforgiving in that, you really, really had to time everything just right, and there was no blaming the game. If you die, it's your fault. It's completely on you.
And that's another thing about platformers. You can't blame the game when you make a mistake.
Well,
I blame Steve.
For some games, like Donkey Kong Country and some of the older ones where the game doesn't always respond the same way that it should for like some reasons, like you're just a pixel off from when this enemy is supposed to spawn, and that throws off your jump entirely. You know what I mean? Like there's some things like that, but Super Meat Boy definitely has nothing like that you can just blame the game. And there's another indie platformer, the letter V 6 times. It's literally V V V V V V is the name of the game. Yeah, a lot of people just call it V. It was really hard to try and figure out how I wanted to refer to that when I did a Let's Play of it. But it's a pretty simple game and kind of provides an optional challenge. Like the main portion of the game is pretty simple, and the game provided a different kind of platforming too. Rather than hitting the button to jump, you hit the button to flip gravity. So like if you hit the button, you'd jump to the ceiling, and then if you hit it again, you jump to the floor. The thing about that was it made navigating stairs very different than, just jumping up the stairs. You'd actually have to like jump to the ceiling and then to the next step. Like you can walk on the same level, but there are no ramps. It's all blocks, so you have to like switch back and forth, ceiling to floor. And like there were some like tight ropes that you could bounce between, like you'd just be bouncing between them automatically. And it was another one of those where you had infinite lives and you'd respawn instantly, and it gave you checkpoints like interspersed throughout the entire thing.
Jesus.
So yeah, like it's really easy to just pick up and go right where you died because it happens within seconds. But it provides a little bit of a challenge because like as platformers go, it's not very hard. It took me all of an hour to beat the entire game, like, and that was even with the optional challenge the last time I played it. But like It gives you a chance to completely ignore some of the harder challenges if you want to, because they're not required to beat the game. But it also gave you examples of you have to do this and there's no way around it. And it was a different kind of platforming because of, it didn't have a straight up jump. And that was something that I really like to see too, because there's not enough of those, I think.
That makes sense. There could be more just jump platformers. That would definitely reinvigorate that genre.
Yeah, I like having non-standard controls. I like non-standard game mechanics like that. And that's what I like about indie platformers, because, nowadays, standard platformers from big developers, though they're few and far between, they sort of stick to their own formula.
Yeah.
And which is why I've always liked the indie genres, because they're innovative, I want to say, but at the same time I don't, because it's creative is the word I'll use, or inventive, something like that. It's all entirely new, and it's entirely different from anything you've ever experienced before, and that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it great. Granted, it's not always done the best way, and only the only the good examples get to be really big, but I'd love to see more games like that. And while I'm on the subject of indie platformers, I got one more I'd like to mention, and it was kind of more of a puzzle platformer. It's called Eversion, and it was a freeware game that basically there were only 8 levels. It was pretty short. But the thing is, there were also 8 different versions, like 8 different dimensions, basically. You could, in certain spots of each stage, you could evert between levels. So, like, in different levels, different parts of the scenery acted a different way. Like, on the first level, clouds are, completely transparent. Like, you sort of just fall right through them. In the second level, you can walk on top of them. Flowers and plants acted differently. Like, in the first one, you just walk right over them. In the second layer, you'd walk on top of them. In the third layer, you'd walk over them. And as you got deeper and deeper, like, they turned into obstacles. Things like that. And it's just, I always like the idea of, switching between levels like that. Like, you have to switch to a certain level to walk past these flowers, and then you have to switch to another level to walk through the clouds. And it's interesting. You sort of have to play it yourself. Like I said, it's freeware, so you can go and find it and play it for yourself. But I always liked that kind of interesting, that whole playing with the level itself mechanic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Another game that we're not really going to discuss too much during this podcast was Quantum Conundrum. It has similar mechanics where you change the plane you're on, basically.
Right.
The reality you're in.
Right. You and I were talking about this the other night, I think.
Yeah, we were. I just thought I'd bring it up quick in passing. But it was very interesting. You do get to change things like that, and there's a lot of platforming mechanics that go along with it.
Now that I think about it, I've actually heard the title before you mentioned it the other night. I try to remember where, and I'm trying to remember why, and that's not happening. So, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I think we could move on to Spyro the Dragon and the good and bad of that series.
Yeah, because like Sonic, that definitely sort of fell from grace.
Yeah.
The original trilogy of the Spyro games. Stefan, you never played those, you said?
I've played both, but not that much. I don't know if to really care much for them.
I grew up on Spyro 3 mostly, which is still one of my favorite games, easy though it may be. And because really, what kid doesn't like dragons?
Good point.
The crazy kids, basically.
Yeah.
But no, definitely the first 3 games were a lot better, and they were a lot simpler. And I mean, I played Enter the Dragonfly, which was sort of Spyro's venture into the modern era. That was on, I think, the original Xbox, GameCube, and PS2, and it was just, excuse me, it felt like it was trying too hard. Like it was trying too hard to kind of be nostalgic, and it wasn't the same. And I'm not really sure how to explain it. Steve, you know what I'm talking about? Did you play any of the modern Spyro games?
I played only Spyro 1 and 2. Wow. 1 and 2, and I have to say, at a certain point, both games just frustrated me, and I was like, okay, let's just beat the game and not worry about all the extra content.
Yeah,
so,
there was a certain amount of that in the third one, too.
It's like they want you to go back after you beat it the first time. Hey, look, you're better at this now, but really, you don't feel better. It feels like the game mechanics are punching you into the ground.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. Like the runways, like the race levels in the Spyro games.
Exactly. And also the egg finding and retrieving.
Yeah, kind
and
of.
And the gems as well could be.
Oh, finding all the gems was a pain in the ass.
Why they did that to us, they're still laughing about this in their offices.
It was pretty devious of them, and that's... there was parts of it that was really good. I mean, Spyro had some excellent platforming. There was a lot of flying around, which is always fun. The partners in the third game made a lot of it more interesting. But it definitely fell from grace, especially with some of the modern games. And like I said, I only really played Enter the Dragonfly, but I've seen some of the other ones played, and they weren't as good. They lacked a lot of the charm. It's hard to look at, really.
Yeah, well, since it's so hard to look at, maybe we should move on to Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot sort of had the same problem, though. I mean,
yeah,
it wasn't quite as fluid as I would say the Mario series was. Like, Mario sort of had, like he had it took a little bit of time for him to get up to top speed, and it took him a little bit of time to stop. He wouldn't just like start on a dime, stop on a dime. Crash Bandicoot sort of did that, and it was a different kind of controls, and it made for a different kind of platforming, but, you know, it felt a little bit clunkier, but it was still... I mean, it was charming in its own way, but it had the same problem that Spyro had, about the same time that Spyro had.
That's very true. I played a little bit of the first Crash Bandicoot, and I found myself not enjoying it. Now, I might go back and play it tomorrow and say, hey, wow, this is more fun than I thought it was. But at the time, the mixture of controls and the way things went just didn't go well.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's probably a good idea, since we're sort of talking about good and bad, to just get into some bad examples. Some examples of platforming done wrong.
Yeah.
Stefan, I know you had a lot of things to say on this subject.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I don't know. I tried to think of some games that I guess a lot of people probably wouldn't think of, I guess, as a bad platforming game because they probably haven't played them. But there was a lot of Sega Genesis games that, honestly, they were bad. It was like the NES game days, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots of great games, but at the same time, there were a lot of shitty games. Sega Genesis, and well, just the Sega in general, just seemed to have that problem throughout its lifespan, which is very unfortunate. And I'm not saying that every console doesn't have its shitty games, because every console has a shitty game, and, you know, that's all you can say about it. I mean, you know, anyone can get licensing to make a game.
Right.
As long as they have the money. That's all that really matters. So,
yeah, they don't need the talent.
Tasmania is one that I remember most, just because it took so long to finish that game, and the only reason that it was so bad is because of the mechanics of the platforming itself. It just wasn't good, like blind jumping for platforms that you can't see, and you know, not knowing that how something works until you die from it first. You know what I mean? Like, not like, you know, in most games, like, oh, well, this is a new platforming mechanic, and you're just gonna take some damage but not die right away. So, you know, you can have a learning curve. But in this game, it was just like, no, you're dead now, so that's too bad. You should have been able to tell the future that there was a pit there. It's like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, play through again. You've gamed over. You predict the future.
That's a great example of a game giving you absolutely no feedback in terms of what everything means.
Exactly.
Until it's too late. And that makes for a bad game because it's just frustrating. It's not fun for anybody.
Oh, well, again, going into more Sega games, you just brought up a really good point, and it made me think of another platforming game for the Sega, which was one of the X-Men games, where you literally turn on the game and you're in a level. Right. Like, as soon as you hit power, you're in a level. Like, you better have the controller in your hand. You just started the game.
Jesus.
And then it's like, oh yeah, I guess we'll put the intro later. It's like, this is not a movie.
That seems like an unfinished game, really.
Well, no, what it was done, they almost done it so it was like a movie, like, you know, how movies start, and then they'll, like, do the credits then after, like, 5 minutes of, like, something that's, you know, integral to the whole plot or something.
Basically, they gave a game a cold open, which...
Yes, and it was just retarded, because not only that, but you didn't get to choose your character, so you just booted up the game like, oh, the Beast? Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool, I guess. But then, like, once you, like, finish that level, it's like, oh, Sega, and this is X-Men and stuff, and now you can choose your character. It's like, oh, this is fucking retarded.
Yeah, that's... how do you... that's...
Feels like they were
You really
missing...
just broke me a little bit.
They were missing some aspects to a complete game.
It's like the developers didn't understand the difference in medium between a movie or a TV show and a video game. You can't just turn it on and let it go. You gotta give a player some kind of chance to react, because it is such an actual, like, participatory medium as opposed to just watching a movie.
Exactly.
So things like that just really don't work. And that doesn't even necessarily have anything to do with the platforming of it, which I'm sure, given how the opening of the game goes, was probably not great, but
it just basically made you not want to play the game, which,
right?
And it is a platforming game, but again, it just does not make you want to play the game, and even the game itself was just not that great. I mean, obviously it's not memorable enough for me to remember, any more about the game than just the friggin' intro. So
Right.
But another Sega Genesis game was Jurassic Park. You could be Grant or you could be the Velociraptor. Now, I like the game. I finished with both. There's just some aspects to both of the characters that just suck. Like, you start sliding, so all of a sudden your character is like lying down or something with his hand under his head kind of thing, like with his legs kicking out, just sliding down through the thing. Or like, oh, I'm going to use the Velociraptor to jump over to that ledge there, because the Velociraptor grabs hold and you'll pull yourself up. But then you jump over there and you just hit the very edge of the ledge that you're trying to grab hold of, and then the thing stands up straight and falls straight down into a pit.
What?
Or using the boat for Grant is slightly retarded. Like, you take fall damage, like, I don't know. Oh, man. I don't even want to talk about that game.
All right, let's move on.
It gets annoying.
You mentioned in Tasmania, it just really didn't do anything to teach you about itself, really.
No.
And that's my big problem with I Want to Be the Guy. I mean, everyone seems to just ride this game's dick. And I've played it. I don't like it because it's purposely trying to be hard and unfairly hard. Like, it's not even that it's hard. Like, I was talking about Super Meat Boy, which is hard, but it's hard in a good way. It's hard in a fair way. I Want to Be the Guy is purposely trying to bust your ass, and I don't like it, and I don't think that it makes a good game. I think it makes a challenging game, and I think that's probably where a lot of the attention comes from. But as a good platformer, it just isn't. It's and I don't know. It does the same thing to me that Jurassic Park just did to you. I don't want to talk about it, but I do because it's completely bullshit. And it's just, I don't know. Let's move on. Let's get to a game where the platforming itself is actually bad. And I don't know if either of you ever played Bubsy the Bobcat or any of those games for, I believe it's for Genesis and then later for PlayStation. It was just really bad.
And for Super Nintendo, but I'm not sure if I played the second one. I know I played the Super Nintendo one and finished it, and I've heard people say that it's horrible, but I don't know. That game, I don't mind, personally.
It was bearable, but it wasn't great. Like, it wasn't a good platformer. There was a lot wrong in terms of, like, screen size, definitely. Like, it gives you far too little of the screen at once, so you can't really see where you're going. And there were a lot of traps. Like, I know it's been a long time since I played the Bubsy games, but there is a lot that I do remember about it, and there was a lot of just shit that sent you backwards. There was a lot of enemies that were pretending not to be enemies. There's a lot of dying to nothing. It was ill-conceived, I think. And it's an example of not doing enough to teach the player about the game through the game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the 90s saw a lot of that. You don't see so much of that anymore because there are some certain game design rules that developers follow. But, I don't know.
On that note, I think I'd like to talk about Shadows of the Empire since I didn't play Bubsy and I'm weird. But anyway,
consider yourself better off for having not played Bubsy.
Shadows of the Empire, I love the game. I love the controls, but on the one hand, I just recently played through it, and the controller I used was the control stick for the N64 controller was completely worn out, and that was the best I ever played it. The best. So what does that tell you about the controls of the game that I was playing? They weren't set up for a brand new N64 controller. No, they wanted you to kill your N64 controller, then play the game. Which, awkward.
Yeah, it speaks volumes for the awkwardness of the controls. I mean, I know a lot of people sort of praise Shadows of the Empire for being such a great game, but
there are a lot
of
great aspects, but the platforming aspect could really piss me off. Even with the loosened controller, there was things that would go wrong. I'd be like, I did this, and you said I did that. No way, man. It's just the way the game works.
And licensed games really... I mean, there was a golden age of licensed games. We talked about that in the last session, too. But there was... Nowadays, licensed games are really just sort of synonymous with shovelware.
Which leads me into two of the games that I've played that I don't want to talk about, but I have to. Tak and the Power of Juju, I couldn't even get past the first level on GBA. Now, I know it was ported to a bunch of systems and it might have been better on something else, but for me personally, it just couldn't keep my interest through the gameplay and the mechanics and the story. It just wasn't there. Now, on the other hand, I played another licensed game, as you might call it, SpongeBob SquarePants. I bought it for my brother for Christmas one year. I lie to you not. I thought, why don't I play this before I give it to him to see what I've got in my brother? I beat it in one night, hands down. It was not fun. The controls probably were okay now that I think about it, but it was putting all of the aspects of a game together is where it failed.
Yeah, it wasn't a game in the strictest sense. It was a collection of smaller games. And it wasn't all sewn together very well. Because I played the game too.
It felt like they stole Mario mechanics and put SpongeBob in Mario's place, and then here you go, see what happens.
And they didn't even handle it very well. Is the problem?
No, it's such a sad game. Because SpongeBob could have been way better, but they didn't give it its own flair. They didn't make it SpongeBob. They made it Mario with SpongeBob characteristics.
Right. It was a Mario ROM hack.
That's exactly what I feel like happened. No lies.
Okay, well, I think we're starting to depress ourselves and everyone with this whole talk of bad platformers. So let's talk about some soft platformers, or soft-core platformers, as Steve refers
soft
to
pee-pee.
Damn it, Stefan, stop that.
As Stefan calls it, soft pee-pee platforms.
Yes, soft pee-pee. All right.
Platform pee-pee.
We mentioned with the poll, my favorite indie platformer is Cave Story, which has a lot of Metroidvania elements, but it does have a lot of focus on actual platforming as well. And it's, for those of you who haven't played it, there's no excuse because it's a freeware title. You can go and find it. So go do right now. Stop listening, go download Cave Story and go play it, and then come back and finish this. But it also, I mean, like I mentioned this with Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania and Metroid, in that it's not solely about the platforming like it was in Mario and Sonic. There was also, the combat aspect of it. Which, I mean, that also, it kind of makes it less of a platformer in the strictest sense and more of an adventure game to me. But, as opposed to a straight-up adventure game, the platforming is, a pretty integral part of the game. Whereas, like I said before, in other games, it's more of a means to an end.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and another kind of softcore platformer, and I say this very loosely, yeah, is the Kirby games, which, I mean, the platforming is not especially difficult in the Kirby games because he has the ability to float. So, I mean, it's really just don't die and you're good. And there's a lot of not dying that happens in those games because they're pretty easy. But they're also not really platformers because, there's no challenge to them. There's not really any, the main part of the game is not getting from here to here because you can get from here to here by just pressing this button over and over again and not having to worry about it.
It's really about how you take those mechanics and play the game.
Yeah, and Kirby was always, as a series, the base difficulty was pretty low in comparison to, Mario or whatever you wanted to play. Metroid, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good game to compare it to. I think everybody's beat at least one Kirby game. Yeah,
and I mean, that's not to say that it's a bad game. I mean, obviously, I fucking love the Kirby games. But
who doesn't?
I mean, they are super easy, and it's all about, how you want to get through it. I mean, the Kirby series is all about, hey, there's a bunch of different ways that you could go through this, so pick one, go for it.
Get the hell out of here.
Right, exactly. And
go play the game.
One last thing we wanted to talk about with some of the softcore platformers is puzzle platformers, which are sort of, again, as the name implies, equal parts, puzzle game and platformer, and where those two intersect. The examples I thought of first thing were Braid and Limbo. I really, really liked Braid. It was super hard. I don't know if either of you played that one.
I haven't played either.
Limbo is... Braid was a little bit more of a mindfuck. Limbo was more of a... it was kind of like a horror suspense puzzle platformer, if that makes any sense. It was very dark, and there was a lot of killing the boy by accident. And you felt really bad about it, and you felt less bad about it in, Mario or Sonic or Braid. But I really like... I've always liked puzzle games. I grew up on Tetris.
Who didn't play some Tetris when they were a kid? I played it on PC.
Yeah, everybody played Tetris. But Braid, Limbo, puzzle platformers like that, or just... I mean, again, the platforming is very... it's a very important part of the game, but it's not the game. Which, I mean, I like that. I like that, you actually use the platforming to try and solve a puzzle. Like, it's not just get from here to here. It's get from here to here without killing yourself, without, with certain limitations put on yourself. Like in Braid, there was a lot of messing with time. If you screwed up, you had, when you died, you just sort of drop and time would stop, and then you'd sort of have to take it backwards and you'd undo your actions. But then there were also parts of the game where the room moved with you depending on the direction you were moving. So, if you moved to the right, everything would move forward in time. If you moved to the left, everything would move backwards. So you sort of had to plan your movements around that, too. And it made getting everything just super difficult. And it's not like Mario or Sonic where you can sort of rush through it and react. You actually have to stop and think and plan.
Sounds a little bit like Rogue Legacy. You can't just rush through a room.
Right. And I mean, Rogue Legacy sort of does that, from what I understand, in more of a combat kind of way.
Yeah. Well, there's also the traps as well. I mean, if you try to rush through a trap, you're going to get blasted. You got to figure out the timing and everything first.
Yeah, and in Braid, there's a certain amount of, you have to bounce on this enemy at a certain time. You have to make sure there's so many enemies on screen to get yourself to bounce higher, things like that. You have to kill them all within a certain amount of time. There were a bunch of different ways that Braid went with that. I actually had to play through that game again because it was really fucking fun.
Maybe
there was
you should
actually
share it.
It's, you know what? As soon as that gets going, I'll share Braid with you guys. Just don't complain to me when it turns out to be really fucking hard, because I warned you.
Hey, that's fine. Sometimes that's what your friends and viewers want to see. Is you succeeding at something difficult,
or completely sucking dick.
I'm not saying that, but I do know people who like to watch people fail. I've seen this.
I love to watch people fail. It's wonderful. I love failure montages. I actually, shameless self plug here. In my V Let's Play, there's one chamber of it where you have to get through one really long tunnel and avoid all the spikes, and then touch the ceiling, which disappears within a second, and go all the way back down the tunnel to get over a 1 block high wall that you can't walk past because you have to flip past it because there's no standard jump in that game, in order to get one of those optional little trinkets that I said make up the ignorable challenge of that game. And I shit you not, it took me 300 deaths and 15 minutes to get that goddamn trinket.
Ouch.
Cut down to about 5 to 6 minutes of the more interesting and hilarious curses.
You're bad.
It was so bad. Alright, well, I think that's about all the time we've got for this week. Thanks a lot for listening. I know you'd love to listen to us talk some more, but, well, no you wouldn't. Trust us.
We would go on for years and years.
We could go on forever, but we gotta split this up so that you guys don't get bored of us.
We ran out of platforming games to talk about, so...
That's true.
So to speak. We do have some recommendations for you guys before we get out of here. One of the things I just have always been into and just recently rewatched is a show called Firefly. And if you've watched it, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
And I forgot to watch it last night.
Stefan knows what I'm talking about. Steve is an asshole.
That's the theme of this podcast. Steve's an asshole.
Steve is an asshole. That's what we're going to title this episode. Anyway, Firefly. What it is it's an old space western. I say old. It started in 2002. It was only on for one season before it got canceled because Fox fucked it up. It's a space western. It's exactly what it is. It's cowboys and spaceships, and it's fucking awesome, and it's Joss Whedon, and you guys will fucking love it, I promise. It's incredibly well written. It's really well thought out. It's wonderful. You'll love it. It's all on Netflix. Or if you want to go and find it through other means, there are places to do that, but I can't actually do that on this podcast because I could get in trouble.
So he doesn't have to worry about getting in trouble. I'm going to talk to you about my recommendation, which is weird. This is right off the wall, even for me. I don't like sports games for the most part, so when I say NFL Streets 2, you better believe that I thought this game was decent. It came out for PS2, PSP, GameCube, and Xbox. But I have it for PS2, and it's been so much fun to create my own character and change their stats as I beat other teams. And what's nice is if I get NFL 2006, I can have a team full of Steves and Sixes for a Let's Play of a football series. It'll be crazy.
Someone loves himself.
I do not love... Hey, no. Not narcissism. Not narcissism.
Oh, he loves his clones. That's different.
Exactly.
Hey, it's not gay. It's masturbation.
Exactly. All right, Stefan, you got something for us to talk about?
Coming this June. No,
stop that.
No, we've been recently watching a show called Under the Dome, which comes on CBS, and it's a science fiction drama television series. It's an hour-long, I guess, time slot or whatever. But it's based on a book by Stephen King, and not only did he write the book, but he's also an executive producer alongside of Steven Spielberg. So you know both of those people. If you like Stephen King's books or you like Steven Spielberg's movies, you probably enjoy watching the show. It's pretty trippy.
Yeah, and for those of you who have seen some other Stephen King adaptations that did not turn out so well, I've seen a little bit of this, and it's actually pretty damn good. So
yeah, it's much better.
Go check it out.
I mean, it's based on the book, but it's not like here it is in one season, that's it, it's done, it's over. Yeah. They're trying to make like recurring seasons, so
and Stephen King is directly involved, which is fortunate.
Exactly. So
all right. Well, I think that's about all the time we got for this week. Thanks for listening. Go ahead and join us next week when we talk about probably another genre entirely. I've been KV.
I've been Six Cyrus, aka Steve, the Engaged Gamers, and of course, our guest of honor.
I haven't been anyone. I've always been me, and I always will be me. I'm not like about to change it or anything. I haven't been the old world gamer, and then I gave up on it through the name of the character or something. I don't know.
Well, you have been the old world gamer, and you still
I'm still the old world gamer right now.
That's like the old Mitch Hedberg joke. I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too.
Oh, Mitch Hedberg at the end of a podcast.
We'll talk about Mitch Hedberg another time. Thanks for listening, everyone. Tune in next time.
Bye-bye.
See ya.